It says preparing to live stream, but it's not live streaming. Let's see here. I apologize for the delay again. Just want to make sure we
Oh,
should have a bunch of people. We have more people on YouTube than we do on Zoom. So let's see if I'm on YouTube.
sure on it.
Okay, yep, we're on YouTube. Good. All right, we're all good. Sorry about that, guys. Just double checking. So let's go over just basically what we see even at the beginning. It's called Shir. It says Shir Hashirim Asher Le Shlomo. Song of Songs by Solomon. Solomon, of course, being the son of David, the third king of the united Judah. And it goes right into it, does not even delay. The very first sentence after the first line that says, who wrote it? Oh, give me of the kisses of your mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Your ointments yield a sweet fragrance. Your name is like finest oil, therefore do maidens love you. Draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me to his chambers, let us delight and rejoice in your love, savoring it more than wine. Like new wine, they love you. I am dark but comely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the pavilions of Solomon. Don't stare at me because I'm swarthy, because the sun has gazed upon me. My mother's son quarreled with me. They made me guard the vineyards. My own vineyards I did not guard. Tell me, you whom I love so well, where do you pasture your sheep? Where do you rest them at noon? Let me not be as one who strays beside the flock of your fellows. If you do not know, O fairest woman, go follow the tracks of the sheep and raise your kids by the tents of the shepherd. So this is, you can see from the perspective of a woman who's talking about love. She's talking about a love, and she's talking to women, some sort of daughters of Jerusalem that she's talking with. See if I can get to chapter 2 here. If I can't, I'll just go to the English translation. Okay. All right. So chapter 2, by night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. So this is about she can't find him. I will rise now and go about the city and the streets and the broad ways. I will seek him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not. Chapter 4. Behold, thou art fair in my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thine eyes are as doves behind thy veil. Thy hair is as a flock of goats, which does not sound like a very nice way of describing your loved one, but this, again, at that time period, it probably was. That trail down from the Mount Gilead. Thy teeth are like a flock of ewes, all shaped alike, which are come up from the washing. Number 7, thou art my fair, my love, and there is no spot in thee. Chapter 5, I am come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I've gathered my myrrh with my spice. I've eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. I sleep, but my heart waketh. Chapter 8, whither is thy beloved gone? O thou fairest among women, whither hath thou beloved turned him? And we may seek it. So you can see all of the passages are about love between a man and a woman. Starts off with a woman. She's talking to a man. She's also talking to daughters. We'll talk about the specifics. So it's also erotic in many sections, very clearly so. And we'll look at that. So the question is, how did it make it in? It doesn't talk about God at all. It does make references to Solomon, Jerusalem, but it doesn't talk about God. And so how could this make it in? And we're going to look at first the overview of it and then see how it made it in. So this Song of Songs, again, in the text, who does it say it was written by? Solomon, just like Psalms, it says, is written by David. Scholars obviously think that is unlikely. They think that it's probably much later. Now, Solomon lived in the 10th century. They think this is much later, probably 6th century. It has some Aramaic in it. That reference maybe during the Babylonian exile or after the Babylonian exile, where they have this connection to this. There's some connections to other poetry or language from that time period. Some say it's much later, much later, that it has parallels with the Mesopotamian love poetry and the Egyptian from much later, all the way in the 3rd century. Some say even the 2nd century. So we have a wide range from the 10th century to the 2nd century. So we know for sure it was written during a period of 800 years. That is about as unspecific as you can ever get, even if unspecific is not a word. It's written over sometime in this 800-year period. That is almost a joke because that gives us no information at all. Probably 6th century, probably after the expulsion from Israel, where we lived in Babylon, and we started spending time there and started. So it's not late. It's not from Solomon. There's no evidence that he wrote it. So you can understand how it might make it in if it's written by Solomon, right? That it is holy because the king of Israel wrote it. He was obviously very famous for marrying 1,000 women. As we know, most of it was because of making treaties with other people. Now, it's got almost no structure and almost no teaching ideas or no thought. You know, it's a dialogue between the lovers for a while, and then she's thinking about her lover, and then she's talking to women, and then there's a royal wedding procession, and then he talks about her beauty, and she speaks to the women again, and then he describes her, and then third people describe her beauty. So there's really no organizational structure in which there is some point. They're not leading us to say love is essential. God says you need to love. It is more just these broad strokes of people talking about how much they love each other in this sensual matter. Now, it is then connected with the Megillot. The Megillot are books of the 3rd section that are connected with a holiday. So this subject matter is somehow connected to Passover. So on the first night of Passover at the end of the Seder, you can read the Song of Songs. Some read it during the Saturday of Passover. Some read it from a scroll, like from the book of Esther. And like the book of Esther, you say 2 prayers. You say the prayer from Megillah and the prayer for Shehecheyanu for celebration. Sometimes it's read from the printed book, so it's no big deal. Sometimes it's read a little bit on the first night of Passover, sometimes on the second night, but it's connected to Passover. And that is a link kind of like why we got it in. So let's picture ourselves. We're 2,000 years ago. We're thinking of which books are going to get in the Bible. You know, we got the Torah, that's pretty obvious. How does Song of Songs get in? When it's so sensual. Behold, my beloved, here he comes. He is leaping over the mountains, bounding through the hills. He is like a gazelle, a young stag, and he calls to me, arise, my darling, my perfect one, come away with me. For you have captured my heart, my own one, my bride. You have captured my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one look. How sweet is your love, how much more delightful than wine. There's even reference to them actually having love together, having sex. So how did this get in? Very simple. He needed an advocate. It had a very major advocate. Somebody we've all heard of from way back, possibly, and his name, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva himself, 2nd century BCE, one of the greatest sages, one of the most important people in our religion, promoted it, saying, while all of the sacred writings are holy, the Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies. He was very supportive of putting this in there, believing it was essential for the Bible, maybe one of the holiest books in there, and in no small part, probably that's how it was canonized. That's how important he was in our history. So he may have even been alive during the canonization. He may have not have been, probably was. And so he helped promote it, and it made it in. So how did everybody acquiesce to a love poem becoming part of the holiest of holy books in our tradition? Very simple. They changed the meaning completely. And how do you change the meaning of something so obvious? It's a boy and a girl, most likely a young man and young woman, falling in love. What do you change it to put it in? When we look at, when we look at Shir Shirim, let's look at some more. What possible way can we change it? Verse 12, chapter 7, come, my beloved, let us go forth unto the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get up early in the vineyards. Let us see whether the vine hath budded, whether the vine blossom be open, and the pomegranates be in flower. There will I give my love. This could very easily be construed as some sexual references. I mean, it's not hard to see it. First of all, they're young in love. Let's go into the vineyard, see if the vine has budded. Chapter 8, verse 1, O thou wert as my brother that sucked the breasts of my mother. When I should find thee without, I would kiss thee, yea, and none would despise me. So it is very, let's see 1 second. Pause again, apologize. Seem to be having trouble with our YouTube feed. Okay, good. So I think it's back. It may not let, when I put stuff on the screen, it seems that. So what could this possibly be an allegory for? And that is what changed everything. They changed it from a love between a man and a woman to an allegory of love between God and the people. And that is how they do it. It's the divine eros. And we're going to see that this is how the book of Song of Songs as looked at in Judaism until the modern era. This allegory between us and God, between different times, between slavery and freedom. And we'll look at how they made these changes. So I am lovesick. So the whole of song is a parable on this theme. This is from Hilchot Shuvah. It's saying the love between a young man and a young woman who write poetry to each other and are completely lovesick for each other should be the way that we are lovesick for God. And again, when we read it, for us, it seems very straightforward. But when you look at Jewish text on Song of Songs, they almost all look at it as this allegory. And so there are examples in the text in the Bible they use to give proof. Jeremiah talks about the fidelity between the people and God. So when we pray to idols, we are committing adultery. So we're breaking one of the 10 commandments, so actually by praying to idols, although we're already breaking it by praying to idols. But Ezekiel calls the people the adulterous wife who welcomes strangers instead of her husband. And the book of Lamentations, which comes from the perspective of Jerusalem, it's a book about how the destruction of Jerusalem and how depressed Jerusalem is, basically says Jerusalem has become God's earthly widow. We've left God behind. We lost God. And so as time goes on, we see it only being written in this allegory sense. So, and some of the allegory references seem really barely making a good allegory. So in Song of Songs, we read, your ointments yield a sweet fragrance. Your name is like the finest oil. Therefore do maidens love you. So she's talking about her man, how sweet his fragrance is. And so the reference that is often claimed is, and this comes from the Targum, at the sound of your miracle might, which you performed for the people, the house of Israel, all nations who heard the report of your might and good signs trembled, and your holy name was heard all the earth. It was more choice than the oil of high office, with which the heads of kings and priests were anointed. And therefore the righteous love to follow the path of your goodness in order that they may possess this world and the world to come. This is what the Targum translate the meaning of this. On a first look, it doesn't have any connection, but when they say your name is like the finest oil, what type of oil are they talking about? The anointing oil for the priests. So there is a way to continue to show this connection between this love. My love in the clefts of the rocks hidden by the cliff. Let me see your face. Let me see your voice. I'm sorry I can't print it. Every time I put something on the screen, it seems to affect the YouTube for some reason. So let me read that again. My dove in the clefts of the rocks hidden by the cliff. Let me see your face. Let me hear your voice. What allegory could this be? And it's hard, but the Midrash is talking about the Israelites leaving Egypt. How do they get that? Well, first of all, let me see your face. That is the request by Moses.
Moses, yeah.
Let me see your face. Again, literally, it's talking about her speaking to him. But text says, well, this is about Moses speaking to God. Let me see your face. And when it says hidden, my dove in the clefts of the rocks hidden by the cliff, what does that mean? That means
Mount Sinai?
Oh, good guess. In this case, it is that the Israelites were hidden in the sea when the water is risen. So we're walking across the sea. If you're on the sides, if you're directly looking, you can see us. But if you're to the sides, you see just this giant thing of water.
Pushing it, yeah.
And so, let me see your face, let me hear your voice is about the crossing of the Red Sea and God's deliverance. And what is the voice? Let me hear your voice. That is the singing we did after we left the Red Sea. Miriam led the people in dancing and singing. That is what they take this. So, my dove in the clefts of the rocks hidden by the cliffs, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, is an allegory for Moses hearing God's voice, seeing God face to face. For the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, where they're hidden, getting to the other side and singing so that their voice can be heard. And so these are the way they take these. Now, what seems very appropriate, now again, I'm not saying the Targum was wrong, I'm just saying from a Jewish perspective, this has always been an allegory. Whereas from a modern perspective, we ask ourselves, what is wrong with hiding? Why are we hiding the fact that it's a love between a man and a woman? People are in love. It's something we promote. The first commandment is to have kids. Get married and have kids. That's the first commandment. So there's a dichotomy between the way it can be looked at. The Kabbalist Ezra of Gerona writes the kiss which we talk about a lover's kiss. The kiss is a parable for the joy attained by the soul in its adhesion to the source of life and the endowment of the Holy Spirit. So when it says longing for a lover's kiss, this kiss is what? We're longing for the kiss of God, or the connection with God. And this text is used quite a bit in the Zohar, which is the main document for mysticism, for Kabbalah. And so it is a way to try and find more meaning from what we see here, which is what the Kabbalah is about. It's about finding new meaning in what we see. So that seems very natural for this to be part of Kabbalah because it is very sensual, but there's also a tradition of finding allegory in it. So how do we find extra meanings from it? The woman tells the daughters of Israel, of Jerusalem, in a dream, she was in her chamber when her lover knocked. She was slow to open, and when she did, he was gone. She searched through the streets again, but this time she failed to find him, and the watchman who helped her before then hurt her. She asked the daughters of Jerusalem to help her find him and describes his good looks. Eventually, she finds him in the garden, safe from harm, committed to her as she is to him. This can be obviously an allegory for what? She can't find her lover. This is an allegory for we can't find God. We search for God and we can't find him, and sometimes we suffer when we can't find him. We ask others to help us find him. And then she describes him with good looks. God, of course, is all good. And where is her lover? He is safe in the garden. What is the garden? An easy reference for us to gather.
Gan Eden.
The Garden of Eden. Gan Eden, which also is, in Jewish terms, heaven. Stuart.
Excuse me, Rabbi?
Sure.
Just a quick request. When you read quotes from Shir HaShirim, could you please give the reference
Yeah, sure. Well, originally I was supposed to show you while I showed it to you, but again, I'm having trouble whenever I show it. I'll try to do that from now on. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
And
if there's no one else, that leads me to a second thought.
What's your second thought?
When we look at Zohar, when we look at Kabbalah in general, The love descriptions, actually in Zohar, the sexual descriptions culminate Shabbat, for example, in the joining of Shekhinah and Tiferet, right? The male and female emanations.
And that's where we're going to get to next. Perfect. Great introduction.
Yeah. Do you think that comes out of Song of Songs or separate from Song of Songs or extension? We're really talking, it seems to me, about three kinds of love here. Sort of the love between God and the people of Israel, these Israelites, love between humans, but at two different levels. The sexual kind of love that's driven carnally, and that other kind of love that's a more spiritual love between the people. And it seems to me that that's the one that ends up represented in Zohar.
Again, it could be. I mean, there's a lot about Song of Songs in Zohar. And as you said, the emanations of God in the Kabbalah, the 10 Sfirot, are male and female, almost that God is part of both. And when they come together, that is when you have all of God, when you have the Shekhinah, which is the divine presence, the feminine, and the Malchut, which is the vessel of kingship. They come together. It symbolizes, for some, the Jewish people coming together. And so when we see in Song of Songs, the man is referenced as Tiferet, which is one of the emanations, it is very simple to bring this into the Kabbalah. Now, did the Song of Songs affect the Kabbalah and help create the idea of the 10 Sfirot? Very possibly. 10 Sfirot, we could talk about this later, the emanations of God. Think of it sometimes as a bridge. We're bridging to God and going step by step. And the more conscious of God we are, the closer we can get to God on this bridge, these emanations. And we've talked about it before when we did Kabbalah. The Lecha Dodi has kind of a reference to, of course, the Song of Songs, because Lecha Dodi is about the love of God, and that God is coming in as, the Sabbath is the bride of God. When somebody gets married, what is the theme of the marriage in Judaism? Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. We even have the women now say that when they get married, because there's no traditional line for women to say, I'm to my beloved as my beloved to mine, which is coming from Song of Songs. So we see the spiritual aspect of the connection. We also see the messianic aspect, that the more we love God, that eventually we're searching for what? We're searching and waiting for our beloved to come. Well, eventually the Messiah is going to come. And then we will be connected to God and all will be well. Very similar to we'll be connected to our loved one. And when two people are perfect matches for each other, then it makes life beautiful.
Rabbi,
Yes, Flossie.
when this was put in, were there any groups that were against this being put in?
Most
Did it go
likely,
in that easily?
absolutely. A lot of them, we know from the Mishnah that others did not want this in. And yet it was put in, obviously, most likely it is the Rabbi Akiva who got it in when you have a very most prominent rabbi of the time, the greatest leader of the time, putting the full force of his opinion into it, it's going to make it in. And that's what happened. But again, the allegory is what becomes of it in Jewish. So on one hand, the allegory could be perfect. It's wonderful because we use allegories all the time to think about us connecting to God in this way, this almost relationship between a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, that our love should be for God as when we were 20 years old and in love. And the person we were in love with was all we could think about. We're making poor grades in college because all we can think about is her or him. And we're writing love poetry and we can't wait to talk to him or her. And we're on the phone all night long and we are dreading the next day because I don't get to talk to him or her. And I think we all know what we're talking about. If we haven't felt it before, we've seen movies like it. So Romeo and Juliet kind of love, but not to that level of ending, to say the least. Flossie.
Where did they decide and how did they decide where to put it in?
And that is still
Yeah.
debate. We do not know. Most likely it is done in the end of the 1st century, beginning of the 2nd century.
No, I mean where in the liturgy, where they decided to put it in.
Oh, they have passages of it, and it's not in many places. References to it are in the Sabbath. For I think Lecha Dodi is often connected to it. And there's a few other places that it's used, but not as often as I mentioned. I mean, I think I overestimate how much is done. Let me find the particular places, because it is pretty erotic. It is pretty, let's see that. I'll find exactly which one. So what happened in the modern age is in the 19th century, scholars started looking at the Bible from a different perspective, trying from the idea of where was it written, as opposed to just looking at it from the biblical text and from the rabbi's perspective. So in Judaism, traditionally, we read the Bible through the lens of the rabbis who came before. You don't just read the Bible, you read the Bible reading through the Midrash and the Targum and the Mishnah and Talmud. You don't just read the Bible and just study it by itself. And that's what happened in the 19th century in the Christian world. And then in the Jewish world, we started looking at the Bible from a very different perspective. And that's where the perspective of Song of Songs changes, because in the Christian world, it's very easy to see what the allegory they thought was. It's a love between what? You know, it's very similar. It's Jesus and the people, or that's how it is. It's a very similar thing. God's love for God's people, sending Jesus, and so this biblical criticism gave way in no small part to the Reform movement's view and others' view of looking at it singularly as a book of love between people and teaching us that love for your spouse is a beautiful thing. And in perfect harmony you will be if you really have this kind of erotic love and how important it is to have to the relationship. Whereas the other books of the Bible do speak about the importance of finding a spouse and treating your spouse with respect and making a good life for each other and getting married and being good human beings. This is what the other books of the Bible stress. And then you come to Psalm of Psalms. It doesn't say be a bad human being, but Psalm of Psalms takes the relationship to a different place. It's not just about being a good human being and treating each other with respect. That's probably more important. But you can also have this erotic love with each other, which really may help the relationship. It does not say have the erotic love without the respect to morality and that infidelity that is with your spouse. But it does say, hey, let's take relationships to a different place. So either way you look at it, it still is very helpful for us. You know, it was canonized, so it's law from a Jewish perspective. It was canonized probably because of Akiva or because of the first sentence, which says this is authored by Solomon. But we are free to look at it from the perspectives we want. Some rabbis, including Rashi, did not look at it as being erotic at all. It's all about God and people, and it's not at all. Ignore the obvious, basically. But for us, it's not so easy to ignore. The Zohar brings more of the idea that we're completing the universe by bringing the yin and the yang, by the male and female together. Our love for God is help bring the Messiah. Our love of God helps us to get across the bridge closer to God, because if we have this kind of erotic, non-stop connection or hope of finding God, if all of our waking day is thinking about finding God, then we're probably doing the right thing. And that's their allegory there. So it's a good one, because finding God is, what we're supposed to do. This is a different way to find God. It's that your love, instead of finding God through being a good human being, it's finding God through some sort of physical need to have God. It is beyond mitzvot. It is beyond love and marriage. It is beyond respect. It is a need to be with God. And if you have this need, then you are a step above the regular folk who respect each other and are doing mitzvot. And that's what the Kabbalah talks a lot about, this need to transcend our relationships here, creating this relationship with God in a way that I would have a relationship with the woman I most desire, the man I most desire in the world. Any questions or thoughts?
Yeah.
Stuart.
There's also potentially, I think, a learning process in the way Shir HaShirim is written. It strikes me that it's very difficult to jump directly to a love of God because of God's non-physicality, partly for one, but because it's sort of there's a give-only relationship and a take-only relationship, but it's very difficult to speak to God and hear God. If we were to take the love of a man and woman and move that from the physical to the spiritual sense, which in a large sense I think Shir HaShirim does, that starts to become a teaching method for how we can love God, understanding that our love of God is not meant to be a physical love of God, but it's a spiritual or emotional or other type of God. And one could argue that that's really the need. That Shir HaShirim doesn't exist and doesn't work, except with this prior allegory, with this allegorical method, because it's too difficult to understand.
Yeah, agreeing. That may be part of it. I absolutely. I think it's also, when you're in love, you tend to really listen to what the person says. And that may be part of it as well. So it's a beautiful thing. I'll read a couple more passages from it. You can go online. It's easy to find online. It's 8 really short chapters. How fair and how pleasant are you, O love, for delights? This your stature is like a palm tree, and your breasts to clusters of grapes. I said, I will climb up unto the palm tree. I will take hold of the branches thereof, and let your breasts be as clusters of the vine, and the smell of your countenance like apples. the roof of your mouth like the best wine that glides down smoothly for my beloved, moving gently the lips of those who are asleep. I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me. Come, my beloved, let's go forth unto the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Let us get early to the vineyards. Let us see whether the vine had, I already read this part, has budded, whether the vineyard, the vine blossom has opened, and the pomegranates be in the flower. And there I will give you my love. The mandrakes give forth fragrance, and at our doors are manner of precious fruits, new and old, which I've laid for you, my beloved. It is really beautiful and poetic, and as we said, sensual and erotic. So it is a confusing book for us to have in there. But again, it's a beautiful one to read. You can read it in English and get a sense of it. And again, we read it on Passover, which will be coming up. Any other questions? Excuse me.
Read it
All
on
right.
Passover.
Flossie.
When do you read it on So you're going to read it in shul, or
Usually you read it, you can read it at the Seder, at the end of the Seder. Some read it during synagogue on the Shabbat of Passover, which we can do, which sometimes we read it as the Haftorah. Even though it's not the Haftorah, obviously, because it's from the, so yeah, I mean, it's again, it's one of the Megillot. It's in the Bible, so it is important. But it's a really interesting, fun read. Definitely could use it if you're dating somebody. Say that you wrote it themselves. There's some references to mandrakes and palm trees I wouldn't use, or to referencing a woman's hair is like that of a goat's hair, which again at that time was probably nice, but today not so much. But it is, I use a lot of references and allegory itself. I mean, in here, metaphors, like, you know, between gardens and gazelles and young and apples and trees and woods. There's a lot of them in here. So fantastic, we did it. So next week we'll continue another section of, actually am I out next week? I think next week I am speaking about anti-Semitism at the school, so there'll be no class next week. I was supposed to do it, I thought I was doing it this month, so our next class will be on the 12th. Anybody have anything in the Bible they'd like me to speak about? Stuart.
This section, Shir HaShirim, is often, I'll call it packaged, with the Megillot, with Lamentations, and with Ecclesiastes. I don't remember whether we have covered Lamentations and Ecclesiastes in any.
We haven't. We could do we could do both of them in one. I mean, they're really terrific. Ecclesiastes, one of my favorites. Lamentations again is the destruction of Jerusalem from the perspective of Jerusalem, making Jerusalem an entity or a being. And Ecclesiastes is basically me.
Yeah.
Sarcastic guy going around making comments on life.
I love Ecclesiastes. That would be a good one.
Ecclesiastes and Lamentations, Michael.
Pirkei Avot.
We can do Pirkei Avot, which is not from the Bible, but it's a really most famous part of it.
That's true. Yeah.
We can do that as well.
That's all right.
So what we'll do is we'll do in 2 weeks, I'll write this down, we'll do Lamentations and Ecclesiastes, and then we'll do Pirkei. Let's do maybe 2 weeks on Pirkei Avot, if that works.
Rabbi,
Mhm.
Rabbi, with
Oh, wait, no,
Purim,
I apologize. On the 12th, we're already doing the Exodus from Egypt. Sorry, my bad. For those of you who missed the class, that was the request. So then we'll do Lamentations and Ecclesiastes. And then we'll do Pirkei Avot on the next week. Is that okay, guys?
Rabbi,
Uh-huh.
with Purim coming up, can you throw in some good Purim trivia?
Sure. Well, funny enough, we're having a trivia night here for Purim this year. Last year, we had the all-night party where we brought in the people from Club One, and we had a bash.
Oh, yeah.
Purim is the Thursday before St. Patrick's Day weekend. So we're doing something a little less grand. So we're going to have, but it's going to be awesome. We're going to do a trivia night, like a real trivia night, like if you go to the trivia night. In between, we'll be doing the readings of the Megillah, which will be fun. And then again on the 9th, don't forget to come. This is not just for Shalom School kids. At 11:30, we'll be performing a very wicked Purim with Karen and Stuart and Art and me and the cantor and Elise and some other people. So that's
Tammy and Lenny.
Huh?
Tammy and Lenny.
Tammy and Lenny, so it makes it fun right there. And then we've got so much going on. We got the board Shabbat, which will be on the 8th, honoring our board. We almost too much, but also at the JEA tonight and tomorrow, they have a very prominent speaker, Mr. Brendan Murphy, speaking about why the Jews. A two-part lecture will be tonight and tomorrow. The main thing also, March 18th, the community is bringing a very big name speaker, like spending a lot of money to bring in one of the most prominent newsmen, writers in Israel. He writes for the Times of Israel, and it's 7 o'clock on the 18th, and he's going to give what is really going on. And again, that you have to RSVP. Everybody's invited, but you have to RSVP. If you do not RSVP, you won't be allowed in the door. Karen.
Question, are they going to stream any of these events? Do you know?
The Purim Spiel we stream, I believe.
Well, no, I'm talking about the ones at the JEA with the
That I
Jewish
have no
Arts
idea.
Festival. Okay.
I would call
I
it that.
was trying to, yeah, I don't know if we can get out yet. So,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah. I'd like to hear that. I read about the talk for tonight and I really am interested.
Yeah, I
Should
can't
be
get
good.
everything, but there's a lot going on. Important thing for
Yeah.
you is to be at the Purim Spiel. It's already
Yes.
written. We only have one song to write, and then we're finished.
Ah.
But costumes, Jason's doing the music, so we're all good. Well, thank you, everybody. So we have no class next week. We'll have class in 2
Okay.
weeks. I'll talk about the Exodus in Egypt, what I taught at Ollie. Was it Monday?
Yes,
And I hope I think it went pretty well. But we'll do it again and have a lot of questions. All right, guys. Excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you much.
Take care,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Everyone have the
Have a
best.
good couple of weeks.
You guys too. Thank you for joining us on the Wednesday class that shall not be named again. Next class in 2 weeks on the 12th.
Great.
Have a good
Rabbi,
day, everybody.
Thanks.
Rabbi,
you.
Yes, Flossie?
were you able to send that telephone call?
Not yet. I haven't got told. I barely even have been in the office, but I will.
Okay, thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.